Hi everyone, I'm Rik Kirkland with McKinsey. Welcome to our latest installment of Conversations with Kevin, an online series featuring chats with and occasionally interviews conducted by our global managing partner, Kevin Sneader. Kevin, nice to see you.
Good to be with you.
So last time we did one of these, we were in Davos. Snowy, very different vibe. Now we're in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress. How does this fit into McKinsey's sort of event strategy?
Well, the Mobile World Congress is the home of technology. In many respects, this is a conversation that's quite different than the one we had in Switzerland, which was, I think, largely about the economics of the world and the future of the world in the sense of tensions between business and society and how those will get resolved. Here, everyone's talking about tech. What's happening, which device is going to win, which infrastructure is going to play out. Lots of conversations that really get to the backbone behind some of the issues we discussed when we were in Switzerland together. Right. It's also a lot warmer here.
What are some of the things that I know you haven't been here long, but what are some of the things that they're talking about?
Well, I've been here long enough to know that 5G is the topic of the day. And it's the topic of the day for many reasons. One, there are those who question whether the reality is actually going to be overhyped, and already is overhyped. There are those who actually conversely see that the advantages it brings in terms of latency, capacity and security are going to mean that this is quite a fundamental shift that's about to occur. And of course, there's all the excitement around foldable devices and what it's doing to automotive technology. We're next to the McLaren stand, where they're talking about autonomous driving in a McLaren. So you have all of this coming together, and it's a real conversation around technology and where's it going.
Depending on when it kicks in, it is a potentially really big deal, right? I mean, the degree of connectivity, the kinds of services it enables, the Internet of Things, which we've talked about a lot at McKinsey, these are all enabled by 5G, right?
Well, here's what's interesting. Somebody said to me, the future's so bright, you need sunglasses. And in many respects, 5G is at the heart of that conversation. But I think there's more to it than just saying it's a technology that promises to change everything. In fact, what we might find is a bit like 3G, which didn't really take off until the iPhone took off. It had a device that enabled just very different ways for the consumer to interact with what was a major change in terms of technology. 5G in some ways isn't quite as dramatic. The biggest changes may actually be more in the B2B space, because what it really brings is this notion of latency, an ability instantly to connect. And that transforms what it means in terms of the operational requirements in a manufacturing location, for example. It also does bring new opportunities in terms of capacity. So we may actually just see an ability for the providers, the operators and the carriers to split networks and provide yet more tools and technology to the consumer. But we don't know. And I think what's interesting to me is a survey we recently did of 46 CTOs of the major providers, and what that revealed is about 30% of them are ready to go. They're going to have 5G rolling out very soon. Another 30% are piloting. They're still in the early phases. And there's a balance, 40% for whom it's yet to begin. So actually maybe the biggest question is, when will 5G really come to you? When are we actually going to see the promise delivered? That's a lot of what people are talking about here.
Yeah, and it's probably not this year or next year, but it's out there.
Well, I think we're in a horizon where we are going to see some things. I mean, joking apart, the foldable devices are going to be expensive, $2,600 for the Huawei one, about $2,000 for the Samsung device. But, here's the but, that price point means we're really talking some way and some distance before the consumer really sees the volumes. On the B2B side, in the infrastructure play, that takes real time.
That's real time.
Because that's a lot of rekitting, remanufacturing, or resiting in the manufacturing context. That's not going to happen overnight. So yes, I think it might be quite some time before we see 5G really coming to us at scale and at volume.
And as you said, it ties into the conversation we had at Davos about AI. In other words, all that automation technology, whether it's the Internet of Things and robotics or autonomous driving, 5G is, just to remind people, it's kind of the backbone.
It is, and it's no surprise that here at this event there are actually 8 themes, and the first one is AI. Actually, the umbrella theme is intelligent connectivity, but then there's AI, and there's a whole series of other themes, Industry 4.0, digital wellness, digital trust, and so on. And I think what we're seeing is those themes really have at their core the need for a superior infrastructure upgrade, and that's of course the 5G conversation.
Is there anything people are talking about that isn't about technology here? Are there any other things?
There's a lot of discussion about talent, and actually it's quite an interesting discussion about talent. If you talk to some of the telco operators, they're worried. And they're worried because they aren't the place that top talent wants to go. top talent wants to go to the tech players.
They've been losing ground.
They've been losing ground. So there's a real conversation happening around who's going to win the battle for talent, and has that battle already finished? Equally at the same time, there's a real conversation happening around organizations. How should Agile be deployed? Agile was originally a software platform and has real relevance there. So people are talking now about how that plays out day to day in the tech companies as well. So there's real conversation happening beyond the actual technology itself around people. The other thing which is happening is, just as in Davos, there's quite a few conversations happening here around the social consequences of technology. How's it going to play out? There's a whole session on the technology divide between the haves and the have-nots. I was in a conversation on my way in this afternoon where people were very animated around the responsibility, the obligation for the providers here to find ways to give access to ensure that people can make the most of the wonderful technology that's coming our way. And of course, an enormous conversation happening here around trust, privacy, who owns the data. Very much a part of the conversation here in Barcelona.
I wanted to update, when we were together in Davos, you characterized the mood as cautious, trending, gloomy. It's been about a month. Is that still sort of the way it feels in terms of looking around your conversations globally around the economy?
I do think that cautious, trending, gloomy remains the sort of catchphrase of the day when it comes to describing the global economy. Clearly news that came out overnight regarding a trade alignment, or I hesitate to say agreement because it's not quite there yet, between China and the US.
Breakthrough, right?
But a potential step forward is giving the markets a boost. But I think no one's under any illusion that this is merely one aspect of a broader set of tensions between the world's two great superpowers. At the same time, interestingly, it's the advanced economies, if any, that are seeing signs of continued softening. Actually, emerging markets, if anything, are a bit more optimistic post-Davos. The Chinese economy, I don't think, has got any worse. If anything, it's got slightly better. Conversely, if you look at what's been happening, I think a number of the advanced economies have called down their growth forecasts, and I just sense a softening in attitude. One commentator, though, said, let's not lose sight of one thing. This is probably a moment where we're in that Goldilocks phase. Not too hot, not too cold. Actually, America's held off with the interest rate rises for good reason, but at the same time, it's not as if we're in recession. So perhaps we are in this sort of uneasy phase when it's okay. It's actually not too bad. But I still think when I talk to executives, you get the reply, how's business? Mine's fine, I'm worried about the other guy. Right. That has not changed. I've heard it in spades today.
Well, maybe we're climbing that wall of worry, as they say on Wall Street, right? Yeah. And just speaking of China, since you, when you're not on the road, you're got a perch right there in Hong Kong. There is concern, aside from the trade conversation, about whether that economy is really softening. And you just said, I think, that you don't see it getting a lot weaker. How do you see the Chinese economy?
Well, I think the Chinese economy has softened. I mean, it's been softening since 2016 in many ways, and growth rates keep being adjusted. We're probably now into the sort of 6.0 range.
Which doesn't sound that soft to most of us.
Well, it's not that soft. And you saw retail sales decline from 10% growth last year to 9% this year. You do see that PBOC has dipped into its reserves 3 times over and changed the reserve rates. But you also see Premier Li Keqiang just last week cautioning very publicly against further steps to inject more money into the system and reminding China that actually this is a moment of time when it needs to face into a transition to a consumption economy and allow for a restructuring on the supply side. So that debate where you're seeing credit growth actually softening or slowing rather, and you're seeing retail remaining reasonable, actually suggests that the underlying basis is reasonably robust. Again, at a lower level than we've seen before, but nevertheless reasonably robust. And that's what's behind my statement in saying I don't think it's got any worse since we were together. Whereas quite honestly, I think some of the forecasts for the so-called advanced economies have got softer since we were together last month.
Let me switch to one last topic. Here in Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress, we have just launched a major new visual identity. It's not the kind of thing we do that often at McKinsey. Don't do that once a year, much less even once a decade. So what is this about? Why are we doing this?
Well, when we were going through the should we, shouldn't we evolve, because that's what we've done, our identity, one of the things that really struck me is I've always believed we should do what we tell our clients to do. And we shouldn't be shy about saying we do this first. And recently we published, I think, a very important piece on the business value of design, and it made the case for the role of design in terms of generating real value. So if we say that, I think we should follow it. So we have taken our own medicine, we've evolved our identity. I happen to think we've done it in a very creative and beautiful way. It also recognises that the firm today is very different than the firm I joined. I've been with this firm for almost 30 years. In that time, we've gone from 3,900 colleagues to 30,000 colleagues, from 40 cities to 129 cities, 65 countries. I think we have to keep evolving, and that includes how we think about the way we communicate who we are and what we do. So we wanted a more modern image. We wanted to showcase the fact that McKinsey itself now consists of people of all backgrounds and very much embodies that change, and you can see it in our own design capabilities. We're one of the world's largest design companies through a series of acquisitions that we made and a commitment that we believe in the business value of design. That's all tied up in this decision to evolve our identity.
So we're eating our own cooking when it comes to
I
design.
really hope we are. I hope we're doing what I'd like to think we do in all places, which is if we say we believe that something should be done, then we do it ourselves. So I think that's vitally important.
Well, I hope people who are listening to this will let us know what they think.
I look forward to that too.
Thank you, Kevin. Great
Thank you,
talking
Rik.
as always.
Good catching up.